Stop recording button. Double tap to activate.
Hello. Well, my yarn lovers, I'm just gonna tell you the truth right now at the beginning of this video. This video is not about yarn, okay? It's not. Now, will there be yarn in it? Of course there will, because I'm right here on the bed in my own little creative space. This is where I knit, this is where I crochet, this is where I come up with my designs, where I do swatches, where I work things out, right? So this is the little creative spot that I work in. So yeah, there's gonna be yarn. And will I be knitting? Sure. Sure, I'll be knitting. I mean, why not, right? I knit during all kinds of things. So I can knit in this video while we chat. Okay. So, but this video is not about yarn. As some of you might know, I've already got my yarn tangled in my little holder. So let me introduce myself. First of all, if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much always for choosing to come back, hang out, and listen. And hey, if you're here just for the yarn and you don't want to hang out for anything else, that's totally okay. It's fine. But let me introduce myself to anybody who might be new. Hi, my name's May. I love yarn. I love to knit and crochet. Those are my hobbies. So yeah, I'll be doing some knitting. But I am visually impaired. I was born this way. I am completely colorblind. I'm blind by light. I've had 3 guide dogs. And I did go to college for 10 years, and I got a master's degree and a doctorate degree. I did that right out of high school. That was what I discovered I wanted to do as a teenager. And I'm not going to get into that story today, but maybe one day very soon on my channel, we'll have a conversation about how I became a therapist, right? How I chose that as a career path. But I did choose that as a career path. I decided I wanted to be a psychologist. And so I went to school for that, and I did work as a psychologist briefly. But I did a lot of my training in college counseling centers. So I did 2 years of my practicum training in graduate school and a college counseling center. I did my pre-doctoral internship at a college counseling center, and then I worked in a college counseling center. And so I did a lot of work there now with the college student population, and I absolutely loved it. I loved my job. It was very fulfilling. It was very rewarding. So I loved it. Now I'm not working anymore, right? I'm just hanging out and crafting. I'm not working anymore, but so I'm not licensed as a psychologist. I'm not licensed to practice anymore. So I want to be super, super clear about that from the beginning. I'm not here to be your therapist, okay? Because I'm not licensed to practice. So if you are in the middle of a mental health crisis, please do consider getting mental health, getting help, right? There's crisis lines, there's mental health resources. You can Google them. So if you're suicidal or anything like that in a state of crisis, please do get the help that you need. So I'm not here to be your therapist, but I do like to sometimes have talks about some of the things that I dealt with in my career, some of the things that I worked with, some of the things that I saw during my career. I've still got my stitch holders tangled in my yarn. If you're blind or visually impaired, well, if you're new and you don't know it because I'm visually impaired, I try to describe things on my channel to other people who are visually impaired. So I am working on knitting a baby sweater, and it's in the dotty yarn. It's colored, it's white, it's cream, it's brown, it's got some spots of brown and tan and yellow and stuff like that. So I've got a big long circular needle that I'm working on with some stitches for the sleeves on holders, and so my yarn is sometimes getting tangled in those holders. So that's what's going on if you're blind and you're listening. But I worked with college students, and so sometimes I like to talk about some of the things that I saw in my practice, things that might be helpful to other people just sort of out in the world who might be struggling. So I know that we're into the middle of June now, and for the most part, I think this coming weekend is the last weekend of graduations for people. I think people have kind of been having graduations for about the last month, right? From about mid-May to mid-June is graduation season, right? I've graduated numerous times. The majority of times I graduated, it was in June. My high school graduation was in June. I went to the
Shane
community
Vaughn, waiting
college.
for you. Shane Vaughn was live.
Graduated then. Sorry, if you're also new to my channel, I use a screen reader to access my phone because I'm visually impaired. And even though it's on silent, do not disturb right now, when the phone is on, it still likes to read out some headlines and different things. I don't even know what it's talking about sometimes, but you will hear that little voice in the background. It's just talking, it's just reading out stuff. Um, so anyways, it is graduation season. I think we're coming to the end of it here this coming weekend. When I graduated with my doctorate degree, that was in May. When I graduated with my 4-year degree, that was in June. So I do believe the college that I used to work at, I believe their graduation is this coming Saturday. And I think, for other colleges that are on the quarter system, I think most are graduating this coming weekend. And then that's about, the end of graduation season. So first of all, if you graduated, whether it's from high school or college or whatever, congratulations. I absolutely wish you the best. That's a huge accomplishment, right? To finish, whether it's high school or college or technical school, nursing school, whatever it is that you finished, that's huge. You put time into it, right? You invested of yourself. Hopefully you're on your way to something big. So I do want to say congratulations to you if you're a parent or a grandparent, with kids or grandkids that are graduating. Congratulations. But I know that there are some kids right now who are graduating from high school, and everybody's asking you, what are you doing, right? What are you doing now? What's your plans? Where are you going? All that. And if you know, that is great. I am so happy for you. I was sure when I graduated from high school, I'm going to college. I'm going to be a psychologist, right? I had my plan all laid out. It's going to be 4 years of undergrad, really focused, laser focused on good grades and focused on getting all the experiences that I needed to go to graduate school, because I already knew I was going to get at a minimum a master's degree in psychology and probably a doctorate degree in psychology. Now, people work as counselors with just a master's degree, but to actually be called a psychologist, right, you have to have a doctorate degree. And so I knew that. I'd done my research and I knew it was going to be, a good, anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 or 6 years of graduate school after undergrad. I already knew that. So I was very focused, and I really was like, that's going to be my career. I'm going to go to college for 8 to 10 years, and then I'm going to go in and have a career, and I'm going to work for the next 40 years, and retire. And I had my life plan, and I thought that was going to be my whole life. Well, guess what? I'm 47, and here I am hanging out with y'all on YouTube, just knitting and crochet, and I'm not working right now. And so, no matter how much we plan, life sometimes has other plans for us, right? So, so first of all, I do want to say, if you do know your plan, like I was sure that I did, I'm super happy for you, and I really do. You can totally tell me that. You're welcome to comment in the comment section and say, hey, I just graduated, right? And this is what I'm doing. I'm going to get, my, I want to be a doctor. So here's my plan, right? Yeah, so you're going to go to medical school, all that, and you got your next 8 to 10 years of your life laid out. Then I'm super, super happy for you, and I do hope that works out for you. But I also want to talk about, to those who don't know, it's totally okay to not know, all right? Because everybody's asking you when you're graduating from high school, they're like, oh, what are you doing now? What's your plan? Where are you going? And it's very, very okay to not know at 18, to not have your life all planned out. It's okay to be like super super excited that you're graduating from high school. It's even okay to, even sometimes, well, it's super, I'm super happy for, like, I was more than ready to graduate from high school. When I finished high school, I wanted to be done with high school like 2 years before, right? I was just like, I'm ready for college. So I know it's a super exciting time. Some people are, just like excited and relieved and, ready to move on. But some people are also actually pretty scared. They're pretty scared and they're pretty anxious and they're pretty confused now, right? Because high school gives you like a structure in life. You're going to school, these are the classes, this is what you're doing. And some people don't know what to do with themselves when they don't have the structure of school. Some people feel very, very pressured to go to college, right? Right afterwards. Um, and like I said, if you have a specific degree that you want to do, then great. By all means, go to college and do that. But also, don't necessarily go to college if you don't know or if you're unsure. If you're like, I don't know if I really want to take on $100,000 in debt and really not be sure about my future, it's okay to say, you know what, I actually think I need a break before I commit to 4 years of college and study, and like I said, a big six-figure loan, because college is getting more and more. I am just shocked by how expensive college is and how little you can do with just a 4-year undergraduate degree anymore. It's just shocking to me. It feels like, um, people literally spend decades of their lives, struggling to pay off their student loans. So, don't feel the pressure, no matter what society is telling you or your parents or whatever, that you have to go and commit, 4 years of your life and take on a massive debt if you're not totally sure where you're going next and what your plans are. Because I worked in college counseling, and obviously my experience of college students is skewed, right? Because I saw that people who were coming in for counseling, I didn't really have a lot of interaction with the population of students that wasn't seeking out counseling. Okay, I did see them some. We did have to do some outreach, which I enjoyed, by the way. We did do some campus outreach, that kind of stuff, where we would go out to different things on campus and we would engage and interact with the students, and I loved that too. I loved doing campus outreach, but the majority of the time I saw clients because they came to counseling. So I'm fully aware that my perspective is a little skewed, right? It's who needed counseling and who needed therapy. So, um, but I saw a lot of really unhappy, really, really miserable college students. I just did. And so I really hate, I hate to see that be the experience of some people out there, where they go to college because it's the expectation, and then they're miserable and they're looking at 4 years of misery. They're looking at 4 years of doing something that they hate. They're looking at 4 years of doing something, getting debt, and feeling like I still am not going to have a direction when I leave this place, right? So I saw those clients in my office. I talked to those students who were truly miserable, who were only at college because their parents said they had to be there. They were 20 years old. They were depressed. They were miserable. They were angry. They were not socializing with the other kids. They were not enjoying their experience. But they were there because that was the expectation, because their parents said, you're going to go to college. Um, and they were unhappy students, and that to me was really sad, because that was like literally the reason that they were in my office, was because you know they were miserable. And so it made me sad to hear that we had to have those conversations. And I did have to help some students, sort of prep them, talk them through role playing, to say, hey, I'm 20 years old, actually. I don't have to go to college, because some parents would say that to their kids. And I used to be
Cheney,
under that
Wah,
belief.
red exclamation mark update. Heat advisory until Tuesday, June 10th, 9 p.m. Pacific Daylight Saving Time.
Sorry, we have a heat advisory in place. And we do. It's 91 degrees today. It's very hot here. My phone is still reminding me of that. So, anyway, sorry. Sometimes my phone distracts me. But I saw those kids, and we'd have to practice and have to help them in my office to sort of prepare them, right? Of how am I going to say to my parents, I'm actually 20 now. I'm an adult, and I don't have to go to college if I don't want to. I don't have to be miserable right now if I don't want to. And so I did. I'd have those help my students, sort of guide them through those conversations and how they were going to have them with their parents. So now, if you're 20 and you're living at home, and your parents say, as long as you live under my roof, you're going to have to go to college, and it is a little bit of a different circumstance, right? Then you have to talk about with my students about, working, and there's nothing wrong with saying to your friends, to your parents, whatever, you know what? I actually want to work. There's other options out there. You can join the military. That's a great option. The military, the Air Force, the Navy. That's a great career. That's a great opportunity to get other types of training, to travel. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with going to a trade school. There's nothing wrong. There's no shame in saying, you know what, I want to be an electrician. I want to be a contractor. I want to work in construction. I want to be a welder. Those are not shameful careers at all. You can make a great career out of being an electrician, out of being a welder, out of being a contractor. We need those people. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it on my channel. My home is a construction zone right now, right? There's construction going on. I had to wait all day to make this video till the construction workers finally left, okay? They were in the basement making noise all day. So I had to wait for them to leave before I could even kind of want banging and noise in the background. But there's no shame in careers like that, no matter what people tell you, or family histories, or your dad's a lawyer and his dad was a lawyer and his brother's a lawyer. If you're like, that doesn't appeal to me, I don't want to go into law. It's okay. You got to do what makes you happy, right? So, because I saw the kids who weren't happy in my office. So there's no shame in saying, hey, you know what, I totally want to take a different path with my life, and it might not involve a 4-year degree, or it might not involve a 4-year degree plus 3 years of, some type of graduate training. It might be, I went to a community college, and there's no shame in going to a community college. I'm just going to tell you that no matter what some people say, oh, you're never going to go into Harvard with, a community college in your background. Well, that's probably true. But how many of us are going to get into Harvard? How many of us actually want to go to Harvard? That was never, I think when I was like, 12 or something, I briefly thought, oh, it'd be cool to go to Harvard, right? But, what did I do there? Okay, hang on. Oh, did I do something wrong with my first stitch there? I'm trying to figure that out. Sorry, I'm just starting a new knit row. I just turned my project again, and I wanted to make sure I got the first stitch correct. Okay. Yeah, but that was something I let go of pretty early in my life, right? It was like a brief fleeting moment of, ooh, the Ivy Leagues, right? Yeah. That sort of like came and went briefly. Most of us aren't actually thinking that. So, I knew that was never going to, so I had no problem going to a community college. I ended up getting full scholarship to the community college. Because I knew I was going to graduate school. So I knew that was going to be expensive, right? So I didn't want debt from undergrad. I knew this was going to be a long journey for me, right? Going into psychology, going into, anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6 years of graduate school. I knew that was going to involve student loans and debt. And so I wanted to do everything that I could in undergrad to not go into graduate school with debt. And I did my entire undergraduate education on full scholarship, okay? And so part of that was going to the local community college so that I could get scholarships in my own community and keep my education affordable. And I had a great experience there. I'm really grateful that I did it. And so, there's no shame in that, and just saying, hey, I'm going to go to the community college and get my basics out of the way because it's way more affordable. My math, my English. So there's no shame in that. So I was able to do that. I was able to live at home for 2 more years. My parents did allow me to do that. But when I graduated from high school, I definitely had friends who had big plans to go off to the university right away. And even though I had my career path outlined, I was like, you know what? I did my summer after high school graduation. I babysat. Yeah, I had my guide dog, and I babysat a baby, a 4-month-old baby. It was one of my mom. My mom's a nurse, and she taught nursing students, and her student needed a babysitter, and my mom was like, well, my daughter's finishing high school and she needs a job, right? Which I did. I needed a job and I needed money. And so my mom was like, hey, come to church, I'll help bring my daughter, you can meet her if you like it, she can babysit for you for the summer. And just bring the baby to our house. She has a guide dog. My daughter's a guide dog because I had a guide dog at the time, Genevieve, a beautiful German Shepherd. But, so when I finished high school, it was like I wasn't going on some big trip, right? I wasn't going to a beach trip. I wasn't, just going to party all summer. I worked. I babysat 4 days a week. And then I went to a community college. So I didn't have big elaborate plans. Yes, I had a life plan, but I didn't have like big elaborate plans when I graduated from high school. So if you're in that boat and you're like, you know what, I'm not sure, I'm just gonna babysit this summer, earn some money, be a nanny, right? There's lots of nanny jobs out there. Childcare, that kind of thing. There's all kinds of other jobs out there. You can just say, you know what, I'm going to wait tables for a year or two. I'm going to be a barista for, a year until I figure it out. I want to earn some money. There's all kinds of careers that you can do in the world out of high school. Okay, so don't feel the pressure to jump in to college, because even some of my college students, I told them to go back to the community college. I didn't care what my employer thought. My obligation was to my students. And so when I had a student that was failing math, math 101 at the university for the second time, and they didn't get it, and they didn't have a good foundation and the basics of math to move on, and they weren't going to be successful, I often told them, you know what, go to the community college and go back to math 99, get your basics, get your foundation in. And I didn't care if that meant that my university might lose a student. I had to recommend the best path for my clients, for them to be successful. They were the person in front of me. They were the person who was unhappy, right? And that was who my obligation was to. Now, should my obligation have been, student retention all the way because my employer was paying my salary? Maybe. They probably won't hire me again, right? Because I certainly did make recommendations to more than one student that maybe they needed to leave college for a while, or go to a community college, or go to a trade school, because I felt my focus wasn't on maintaining the numbers and student retention. And yes, student retention was important, of course, right? We want to keep our students in school when possible, to help them to be successful in school when possible. But ultimately, for me, my clients' happiness and well-being was my number one priority, in their mental health. And so if indeed it seemed like, you know what, this person's actually going to be happier not in college, right? If college is the source of the misery, if it's the source of the anxiety, then that's not where they need to be in life. To me, it was like, it was simple. And I know for them it wasn't simple, because their parents said you have to be there, because their friends all said that's the expectation, because that was the societal expectation. Their whole friends group from high school was like, yeah, I'm going to college. Yeah, we're going to the university. Yeah, we're going to do this, right? And so I feel like in some circles and in some families, there's such a pressure to do that, that we can kind of lose sight of the individual and what they might want. And, I've had clients in my office who are, lying to their parents, and they failed all their classes. And now they're in my office on an emergency basis, on a crisis, because they are going to have to call their parents and say, I failed every class this year. And they didn't tell their parents the whole time. They knew for weeks, if not a month or more, that they were failing, right? These students didn't, it usually failing didn't come as a surprise to my students. They knew they were falling behind. They knew they weren't doing well. They knew they didn't make their schoolwork a priority. They knew that they were struggling, but they kind of wanted to avoid it. They were doing like the avoidance thing, right? So they just thought, if I'll just sort of like ignore it, it'll go away. And then, of course, realizing that by the end of the term, they were still failing. And so they'd come into my office and they'd be upset and distraught, saying, I have to call my parents, I have to talk to my parents because I'm failing every class. And, and I've lied to them. They've been asking me for the last, 2 months, how's school going? How you doing? I've said, look, it's great. I'm doing well. Oh, it's good, Mom. It's good, Mom. Right? It's good. Their parents would try to ask them more questions, and they've been lying to their parents for a couple of months about how school's going. And now they're in a total panic, right? In my office, having the conversation. I had a client that wanted me to call. This is a young man, and he wanted me to call his parents and talk to them and have the conversation with them. He wanted me to break it to his parents and tell his parents that he had failed every single class. And of course, this was like a 20-year-old man, and so I knew it wasn't in his best interest for me to have that conversation with his parents. I knew that. He was a grown up. I guess he was still a young man, but he needed to learn how to have that conversation with his parents. But I did help him with it. We prepped it, we role played it, we practiced it. We talked about, how he was going to bring it up, and so I did everything that I could to prepare him for that conversation. But I did ultimately leave it up to him to have that conversation, to be the adult, and to do that. Because I could tell when he was asking me to do it for him, I thought, this is a young man whose parents have done a lot of things for him, right? He hasn't had to do those big adult things. He's been able to avoid those tough conversations, those hard conversations. He's been enabled. And he doesn't even know how to have this type of conversation. And so I knew one of the best things that I could do for him was to actually empower him and enable him, to help him have the skills to have that conversation, because that's going to prep him for other difficult conversations in the future, right? That sometimes we don't need to do everything for everybody. We can help them, we can guide them, but ultimately we need to let people do the hard things in life so that they learn how to do them. They learn that it's going to be okay on the other side, that they can grow from that. I knew he was going to learn the most from this experience if he had to have the conversation with his parents. Not me, him. He was going to have the most experience emotionally, the most growth, if he could have that conversation and not me. So I've seen those students, and so that's really the message that I want to put out there today. This is sort of in May, I did some videos on Not Your Therapist Thursday, and it was about every day in May and creating new behaviors and that kind of thing. And I really thought, at the end of the month of May, I was done doing a Not Your Therapist Thursday video, because I'm not anybody's therapist. I'm not on the internet to be anybody's therapist. Because I'm not licensed. But this is going to be a Not Your Therapist Thursday video, because I know that there are going to be young people out there who are scared and who are confused, no matter how happy and excited they are, and no matter how many times they've given the expected answer to their parents, to their family, to their friends. This is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going. I know that inside there are still some people out there who are very scared and who are very confused and who are like, I'm saying that I'm going to college. I've got plans to go to college, but I don't think that I actually want to do that. And I just want to say to you, it's okay. It's very much okay to not do that, to not do something. Once you're 18, right? Once you're an adult, if you're not 18, it's different. And I realize that most people make their plans before they're an adult. Their parents start talking to them for a couple of years about going to college and their future and their plans. And so, when you're not an adult yet, you do feel pressure to go along with what your parents want, and you do have to. But at the same time, when it comes to you going to college once you're an adult, it's okay to say, you know what, I am 18 now, and this isn't what I necessarily want to do. So it's okay to be scared. If you're graduating and you're excited, that's great. But if you're graduating and you're scared, that's okay too, right? It's okay to say, I don't actually know what I want to do yet with my life, because, at 18, you really do still have your whole life ahead of you. You've got a lot of time to figure that out. And 4 years at 18 is a long time. It's a really long time. I mean, yes, it goes by quickly. Time does go by quickly. I was, surprised always. Like in the moment when I was in school, it would seem like the days were forever. But of course, when I look back at it, I think, wow, did those years ever go by quickly? So 4 years is a really long time to commit yourself to something that you're miserable at, to something that you're unhappy in. And I've sat with those people in my office, and so I know that experience is very, very real. So it actually is okay. I know those will be tough conversations to have with family members, but I encourage you to have them. And it might be that you have to make other plans, because your parents might say, well, you know what, if you're not going to college, I'm not supporting you, right? And it's okay too for them to say, you're not going to live in my house and not work and not go to school. So if you say, hey, I don't want to go to school, that's okay. I'm giving you totally permission to say, hey, you don't have to do that. But at the same time, you do something, right? Like I said, whether it's signing up for the military, or whether it's a trade school, or whether it's just, be a barista, or work in a grocery store, stock shelves, be a dishwasher. There's all kinds of jobs that you can do for a year while you figure it out. It might mean, if your parents say you can't live here if you don't go to school, I'm not going to support you. It might mean, living with some friends, getting some roommates, working, in delivery services as a delivery driver. But there are other jobs that you can do. All kinds of other jobs. I rely on my delivery drivers. As a non-driver, I got delivery drivers coming and going here all the time, okay? I rely on them. They're necessary in this world. So, don't think, as long as you got a legal driver's license and a good record and all that. I know some of the driving services you have to be, older than 18. But, there's all kinds of jobs that you can do out there that are valuable, right? That are valuable and that still contribute in a meaningful way, that you can still have pride in those careers, no matter what, no matter what your whole family has done, no matter what your friends are doing or what they say, you can still have pride in other careers. You don't have to feel like, it's only a career to be proud of if you have some kind of prestigious degree. Because that's just not true. I mean, I do talk about it and say, yes, I have 10 years of college. Yes, I have a master's degree. But that doesn't make me. It makes me say that, I went to 10 years of college, but I don't ever ask anybody to call me Dr. Wong. I never ask my clients to call me Dr. Wong, ever. I told all of my college students to just call me May, to just call me by my name. To me, it wasn't something that separated me from them. And so I was never the kind of person that, and I'm still not, that looks down on other people because they don't have a college degree. You know, I still say, you know, hello to the janitor. I still thank my waiters. I thank my drivers when they bring me stuff. I say, can you leave it on the porch? Thank you so much. You know, I ask them questions. I tell them to have a nice day when I talk to them. I don't talk to all of them. Sometimes I do just have them leave things on the porch. But, you know, I still, you know, they deserve respect. So don't let anyone make you feel like, you know, unless you go to college, that's a career, you're not going to be respected in this world, and people aren't going to treat you well. I believe that no matter what, if somebody's out there working hard and they're doing their best, right? They're trying, they're showing up, they're doing the job, then you know what? They deserve to be thanked. They deserve to be appreciated. They deserve respect, no matter what. You know, whether it's just the person who's the bus boy or the bus person who's picking up my dishes, they deserve it for me to say thank you so much. So you know, don't feel ashamed if you say I have to have that difficult conversation and say, you know what, this is just what I'm going to do for a year while I figure things out. Rather than be that person who's in the counseling services office, um, you know, who's looking at 4 years of misery, who's already done a year of it, and they're like, I don't know how I'm going to get through 3 more years, right? Or even worse, I'll be honest with you, I saw a lot of seniors at the end of their school journey who were super excited and super focused, and I was so happy to see those kids off on their journey of life into adulthood. But I also saw seniors in college who were finishing their 4 years of college, and they were still in that scared position. 4 years later, they were scared and confused. They invested, you know, 4 years of their life. They invested, you know, it wasn't $100,000 then to get a college degree, but it was still, you know, $60,000 or something, you know, to get a 4-year degree. And they were still scared, and they were still confused. They still didn't have direction. They still didn't have a better future plan. They were like, okay, I've got a liberal arts degree, and I still don't know what I'm going to do with it. You know, they'd get a degree in philosophy or a degree in communications, a degree, you know, in political science. And for sure, a degree in political science can, you know, take you all kinds of places in the world, right? It can. But, you know, it might not as well, depending on if you might still study that for 4 years and be like, oof, I don't think I want to do this, right? So I saw plenty of students who were graduating with a 4-year degree who still didn't have a good sense of direction. It was like they felt like they invested all this time and all this money, and at the end of it, they didn't have any better sense of direction on their life than they did coming into it. And that, you know, that made me sad for them. I'm thinking, wow, they just put all this investment of their life into it. And I'm not saying they got nothing out of their college experience. You know, I'm sure that they did gain some valuable knowledge and experiences along the way. But at the same time, it's a tough position for those people to be in, right? To say, you know, at the end of this, I'm graduating and I have no clue what I'm doing. All I know now is I have debt. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing in life. And now I'm to the same position I was when I finished high school, you know, without any better sense of direction of what they're going to do with their life. And so, you know, that's all. I'll wrap up this conversation because it's been pretty long and I don't intend for these videos to be super long. But I just felt it in me to speak for the Not Your Therapist Thursday to anybody who's graduating from high school or who's in college, who might be struggling with that, who's feeling the pressure. Maybe, you know, maybe you're finishing your freshman year of college right now, and you are going and you're going to go home for the summer, and your parents are like expecting, right? They're like, you can come home for the summer and you can work, but they're expecting you to go back to the college in the fall. Well, if you've had a miserable year, it's okay to say to them, you know what, I don't think I'm going to go back for 3 more years of that, right? I didn't enjoy myself. That wasn't fun. I want to take a break from school. it is okay to have that conversation while you're at home for the summer. It is okay to even think about the conversation. Maybe you're like, okay, now I'm thinking about it, but I'm not ready to have it. Take your couple months off, and then think about having the conversation with your family in August or whatever. Um, but I just know that I've seen my share of confused and scared and sad and depressed college students in my office enough to know that yes, graduation season is exciting. Yes, the end of the school year, if you're in college, it's exciting. You've got a year done, but it's also, 1 year closer for them of going, okay, I can't do it for 2 more years. So I just want to let people know that it's okay to not know where you're going in life yet. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to not have direction yet in life. It's okay to step back and change your mind. It's okay to say, I'm just going to do, this job for a year or two till I figure life out. And then figure life out. And you will. You might work as, in a job for a couple of years and find out, guess what? I don't want to do that forever. And that's one of the best experiences you can have and learn from is say, you know what? That was I learned from that. It was educational, and I don't want to do that for a career. I definitely know now I do want to go to college, and this is what I want to do. So I think I'm going to end this video for now. I'm sure I'll talk about this topic again at some time. I'm sure, but I don't want it to be too long. I don't want it to be too boring for anybody. And I just hope, since this is a stitching channel, it might not attract the right people because YouTube doesn't always know what to do with videos like this that are sort of out of my usual topic. But I do want to put it out there and hope that it finds the right people. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening. I hope that this helps who it needed to help. And until next time, oh, turn on the light. If you're still here, if you're one of my yarn content people and you're still here, I will turn on the light so you can see what I'm working on. Because I know that's what stitchers want to see. If you're a stitching person and you hung out with me, that's what you want to see. What's your progress, right? So hang on. I'll put you on pause.
Pause.
Okay, so here's the progress. I was working on this little baby sweater. Here's the yarn. I don't know about you, but I'm loving this yarn. How it's working out, how it's playing out on there. I wasn't sure what to make of this dotty yarn when I got it. I wasn't sure how the colors were going to play out. But I think it's really cute. I'm really loving it. I think it's going to make a cute little baby sweater. So, I love to make little simple baby garments. So, yeah, that's what we got so far. So, if you were wondering, this is the Premier Dotty yarn. I just opened it on a yarn unboxing. And this is what it looks like. There you go. All right, my friends. Well, thanks for listening. And until next time, happy stitching.
Stop recording.